before I forget. Okay, so good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, as I'm speaking and meeting people from the waiting room, for this important conversation. I also wanted to thank the NAHI committee for helping to organize the program, and for Roger Spellman for co-sponsoring this program tonight in memory of his son, Yaakov. Thank you. October is Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month, and I'm so glad to partner with Riva Judas from Nechama Comfort to talk about the experiences that affect every community, including ours. In my role as Yoetzet Halacha, I have guided many couples and many women through both the halachic and the emotional aspects involved in pregnancy loss. And we have come a long way as a community in terms of talking openly and honestly about these experiences. Still, there is more that we can do as a community to support those going through these experiences. And so thank you for being here tonight as part of that. The experience of these losses is universal. In this week's Parsha, we read about how Hashem promises Abraham that he'll make him a great nation and that he will have so many children, he won't be able to count them. But having those children does not come easy to Abraham. We read about how Sarah was not able to have children for many, many years. And then when the children are finally born, you can imagine what's going through Abraham's head, right? The plans he has for them, the experience he can't wait to have with them, the legacy he's looking forward to passing on to them. But we know that that does not go so smoothly for Abraham and Sarah, right? Abraham ends up sending Yitzchak out to the desert where he almost dies, and he almost sacrifices Yitzchak at the Akedah. So, in those moments, you can imagine those deep feelings of loss, right? That Abraham must have been thinking during those episodes, thinking about, how his hopes for his future were abandoned, his plans depleted, his dreams crushed. As soon as a couple finds out that they're expecting, parents start to dream and to plan for the future. And no matter what stage of that a loss occurs, it is absolutely painful. I personally experienced a few early miscarriages, and I can tap into those feelings of grief, of dashed hopes, of uncertainty from those times. At the time, I didn't know how to process those feelings and who to turn to for guidance. And so I'm so happy to be able to be part of that support system for women and couples today. And I'm also so grateful that there's so many more resources available to us today, including Nechama Comfort. So I'm going to turn the program now over to Riva Judas, who's going to tell us more about the experience of pregnancy and infant loss, as well as how couples experiencing these losses can find support, and how we as a community can offer our support to those going through this. Following her presentation, we'll have time for Q&A. So if you do have questions along the talk, please feel free to write them in the chat. You can write them, to everyone or to me, and we will get to the questions at the end. It's now my pleasure to introduce Riva Judas. Riva Judas is the founder and director of Nechama Comfort, an organization that supports families through the trauma of infant and pregnancy loss. She has counseled people around the world and has trained medical staff, clergy, lay leaders, and communities in best practices for supporting grieving families. Riva received her chaplaincy certification from Hackensack Medical Center and is a Resolve Through Sharing certified infant pregnancy loss facilitator. She holds a BS in Human and Child Development, and we are so fortunate to have her join us tonight. So Rita, please take it away.
Okay, thank you so much, Sarah, for inviting me here. I know we've been talking about it for a couple of years, even before COVID, coming in person, Zoom. So as we talked about before, this is just the first meeting, and I hope to see everybody in person. Your work is amazing. I will tell you before I start, I am a big fan of the Yoetzet. I was on the committee, the original Yoetzet, and I remember going to my first presentation in Teaneck, where I live, and coming home after going through my pregnancy losses and my having my living children, saying to my husband, wow, if the Yoetzet had only been around. And I used to say they're the best thing since white bread. But then as we got healthier, I had to change that to whole wheat bread. But it really is unbelievable that communities like yours has you as a resource as well. So that being said, I'm going to begin tonight's presentation. It is wonderful that we got it in almost the last day of October, because it is Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month. And I'm sure many of you are saying to yourselves, I didn't know that. We do know that it is pregnancy loss, that it's breast cancer awareness month. But actually in 1988, Ronald Reagan on October 15th signed it into law. But it's taken many, many years for society to be comfortable with pregnancy and infant loss. And we still have a lot more work to do. So for you who have come on tonight, I thank you, and I hope you share the information with others as well. So let's begin. This is what we're going to talk about. What is pregnancy and infant loss? What are the emotional and spiritual effects? Very important religious considerations in a loss situations. You may be surprised with what you learn. And it's a community awareness program. How can you be helpful? And many of the tools that we share tonight can be helpful in many situations. Other traumas such as divorce or illness, or simple as your child not getting into the college or seminary or getting the bunk they want in camp, and how you could be helpful, the do's and don'ts, and what to avoid. So like you said, Sarah, our hopes and dreams. When I talk about my firstborn son, he was our oldest. He lived for 12 hours. He was born 35 years ago. He died of a congenital heart defect. He was born on Passover. His name is Pesach. And we also have 6 miscarriages, and thank God for living children and 8 grandchildren. And before I did this full time, I taught kindergarten for 30 years. So we know that the parenthood journey begins in preschool. The kids are playing in the house. You're the mom, you're the dad, 4 moms, 5 dads. They're going to name their children. And this is what's going to happen. And we're going to grow up. We're going to find the perfect shidduch, our perfect spouse, no problem, get married. And we're going to have our children exactly when we want, how we want. And your family, friends, and community, unfortunately or fortunately, are excitedly waiting to hear about your first child. And we think we have that control. This is what we're taught. This is how how we grow up. But what happens when that's not how it happens, when we don't have the control, which unfortunately is more times than not. And here are the statistics. When we talk about pregnancy and infant loss, we're talking about early and late-term miscarriages. Today, with the medical advancement and technology, couples know they're pregnant, as the commercial says, a day before they conceive. And they can find out the gender at 12 weeks. Sonograms are so true to life. You could look at almost at the head, the fingers, and the toes at so much earlier. So the attachment is there. So when we talk about early miscarriage, it could be, 6, 7 weeks. But once they see the positive on the pregnancy stick, they're attached to the baby. Ectopic pregnancies, medical interruptions, terminations. Today, again, because of medical advancement, families are given the choices because of the knowledge they have of genetic diseases, detailed information with genetic testing, and they are given the choice of termination, but it's really not a choice. Twin or higher birth loss, stillbirth, newborn death, and death within the first 2 years. We've heard in the news, actually, the last couple of weeks about the increase of respiratory infections in toddlers. And unfortunately, we've seen that as well in the Fama Comfort last couple of years. So we also work with families who experience toddler death up until the age of 2. Statistics are there, they haven't changed. 1 in 4 pregnancies result in a miscarriage, about 1 million every year in the US. So it's possible when you're sitting in shul, or when you're sitting or standing in the supermarket line, somebody there has had a miscarriage, or yourself, or your sibling, or your parent, or your grandparent. And there's 26,000 stillbirths every year in the US, which is a very high number. And that's what we just said. It's not just a statistic, because when you're the 1 in 4, it's you, or it's your friend, or it's your child. And how is this different than other losses? The emotional challenge. First of all, it's not the right order. Children bury their parents, unfortunately, and parents don't bury their children. And we said before, we get the attachment starts. When people will say to me, why are they so upset, especially if it's an early miscarriage? The planning has already started when we're dating. I'm not going to discuss the shidduch dating crisis. That's not out of my league, but we know on our resumes or when we're dating, how many children do you want to have? Do you want to have a big family? So children is already being discussed. It's different because there's no concrete mementos. When you go to someone's Shiva's house now, there's montages made. There's photo albums made of your loved one that you've had for so many years, but there's not going to be that many mementos. People are uncomfortable discussing loss in general, let alone a baby loss. And people are expected to just get over it and to move on. But tonight we're going to show you a little bit how that's not possible. This is what it feels like. And here we have a picture of a woman, but I really want to emphasize that another reason the loss is unique is because it happens to both partners, both spouses, the men and the women. There's a difference, which we're going to discuss, but that's so important to keep in mind. It happens to both the parents, it happens to the grandparents, it happens to the extended family, the siblings, the children, or the future children. And we work with the entire family. We work the couple as our main client, but we understand the importance of really working with the family to help them go through this grief. And the effects of stress and trauma are the same going through this pregnancy, infant loss. You have physical, emotional, social. And it's important to understand that each person involved will experience this in his and her own way. And that's what makes it sometimes difficult between the couple, because one is feeling one way and one is feeling the other way. But it's on their own timeline. There's no pamphlet or booklet. When a family reaches out to us and they say, could you mail my daughter something? Could you mail our community member something? We have information about Nechama Comfort, but that's about it. We really need to speak to the couple because it really is so personal. And it could change moment by moment. And that's what we want the family and friends and the community members to understand. And this is what it feels like. Our couples always share to me, this is how it actually feels like, that they feel like they're in the middle of a busy street standing and traffic is going back and forth around them. And even though we don't wear our grief on our sleeves, we're not, the Judaism, we don't walk around wearing black. We get up from Shiva and we're told to take our walk around the block and put on our clothes. I always try to wear something bright when I'm speaking because we don't represent necessarily how we feel, but we have to understand what the people are walking around feeling. So this is big when discussing, especially within a community like yours. And let me just take a moment now that we work with all Jewish families, from the unaffiliated communities through communities like yours, through the Hasidic communities, on our support group, which we have a weekly support group on Zoom globally. We do 2 in the evening, 2 in the afternoon, so we can get people in Israel on. I always say Mashiach could come based on our group because we have everybody on. We're not concerned with their level of religion. We're not of practice, what they look like, what they wear. We don't talk politics. We don't talk COVID. But we're just there also to help each other through our grief journey. And the spiritual effects, again, can differ between people. They're going to ask why me? Even though in today's day and age, we have, again, I said more medical advancement, knowledge for us. So doctors could give possibly a reason that wasn't around when I had my miscarriages, but the question will never be answered, why and why me? And I tell the families that we can't answer that question. We will never know. We work with the couples individually, how to put this loss into their life and to move through it and to help them understand on their level. If they can find something and they can answer that question that works for them, if a Muna will work for them, if they can put it in a place, that's wonderful for them. But if they just have to accept it and move through it and accept that they won't know why, that's okay too. You're going to be mad at God. That's a big one. We just finished all the Yom Tovim. Our support groups are big before, during, and after these holidays. It's so common, especially when it's the first year of the loss, to hear, I didn't go to shul, I went to shul, I didn't daven, I'm mad at God. And I always say, that's okay. We're human and we're not God. God has a lot on his plate. And he's not just looking at you. Or they may overfocus on rituals. We have couples that never go to shul, have never gone to the mikvah, and they want to, especially when it comes to the burial. They feel that they want to do a proper Jewish burial or rituals, or they start keeping another mitzvah. So it really, really depends on the couple. And it can fluctuate. Once I remember having a grandmother call me, a grandmother of the baby, and she said, my son, they lost a baby 2 months ago, it was right around Pesach, and he didn't come to the Seder. Can you believe that? And I said to her, I'd be surprised if he did come to the Seder. So we really have to be understanding and not get nervous about it. especially as we talked about mikvah. Mikvah is, and this is where the Yoetzet is amazing. The mikvah is a difficult time for these couples. And again, they have to be, we have to work with them individually. We help them. We reach out to the mikvah attendants. We've gone with the couple, or it could be a beautiful situation too. So again, we have to be very, very understanding. And when we train the Yoetzot and the mikvah attendants, we tell them that it has to be, personal for the woman going. And they can either need their community to hug them, or they distance themselves from the community. But they always need to know that you're there in some fashion. So that's what we said. That's what's challenge about it. It can create tension in the marriage. Unfortunately, sometimes there's already tension in the marriage, or especially if they're going through infertility treatment. About half of our clients have a fertility journey and half of them don't. So there could be a lot of stress on the couple already for different reasons. They could be going through other situations with other children if they have older children. So that's why it's so important that they get the help that they need going and processing this grief. What's also interesting that makes it unique is that, we hold that we don't share the news of our pregnancy. It used to be 3 months. I started seeing changes. So sometimes they have to call their family and their friends and say, guess what? We're expecting, and guess what? We're not expecting. So actually I've seen a change that people will share the news earlier than they would have. But if not, we need to be understanding of that situation as well. And my famous line that I tell my children, always tell me that's what they're going to put on a t-shirt. Sometimes I say it too much, is that everybody has a family, but the names are changed. And it's so true. Whatever the dynamics of your family is, that's how it's going to be when you're going through this sudden trauma. And it's important. That's why it's so important to have communication, to have somebody involved that can help the dynamics. It can bring families together. It can also bring some negative dynamics too. So how can we move through the grief and not move past it? This is the goal we tell the families. When they first reach out to us, and one of our case managers becomes involved with the couple, we tell them, A, you're not alone. You joined the club that you never wanted to be a member, but you're a lifetime member. And we're going to help you to put this child into your life and to move through it, because you're never going to get over it. I think, Sarah, you had mentioned that you remember with your miscarriages. I remember exactly when they happened to me, and mine happened a long time ago, what month they were in, what season it was in, even, if there's a holiday, what was going on in the news in that day, you're never going to forget it. And you need to go through it. And if I had the magic pill to take it away, I will give it, but we don't have that. And it's so important to accept the reality of the loss, and for families and community members to understand that it is a true loss. It's painful. It's their new normal. I know we heard that expression during COVID, but we said it first. Finding a place for the memories, and we're going to talk about what's created with the memories of the baby, and finding your place of your old normal, and how are you going to get through life. So this is exactly what we're saying. Grief is not a straight line that disappears on the horizon. We can think about any type of grief. It's a curvy line that goes up and down, thins out for a while, then widens when you're unsuspecting. And I think we've all been touched by that during the last few years of COVID as well. So this is religious considerations, and I will preface this by saying that this may surprise some of you, or hopefully not as many as it used to. And we have worked with many, many rabbis, many rebbeim, many authorities from all aspects of Judaism to put forth these guidelines. And it's so important. We give the family, the couple, the choices. And it's for them to make the choices, and it's for us to accept their choices. And it may be something that you never heard of. It wasn't done. Many of the customs that we've taken on in Judaism came from society. We've never talked about anything. Like if people my age can remember, or even not so long ago, there were no months. There were no ribbons to wear. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have things instantly shown to us. We didn't have cell phones. We couldn't Google information. So we were told not to discuss anything. Some of you may remember your grandparents whispering the word cancer. We didn't talk about trauma. Everything looked great. We didn't want to ruin, the shidduchim. We didn't want to wear anything on our sleeves. When my husband and I lost our son 35 years ago, we were told by professionals to go home and get pregnant and not to have therapy. We don't need therapy. They said, you know why you're depressed? We did eventually. And we were fortunate that my father and mother were a rabbi and a rebbitzin at that time. My father did never become a retired rabbi. So he was able to actually call into the Rav at the time and to speak to people. And we were lucky to get some of these things that were not offered not only to Jewish couples, but to couples in general. So a baby, now more things have changed. I actually worked with a family this week who the loss was at 14 weeks. So it's a miscarriage. Depending on what state you're in, the weeks change. If it's a late term miscarriage, if it's a stillbirth, it depends. But a baby that has some type of form, in the medical word, they call it a fetus, we call it a child, can be prepared for burial. The one thing that I will share with you that I think many of us know, there is no halacha written. There are no guidelines. And for a while, my husband and I were angry. How come we had a baby and we don't sit shiva? There is no shiva, formal shiva for a baby under 30 days. It didn't make sense to me. We talk about life and conception and when it begins, and it didn't make sense. But I think what I realized after a while was how much harder would it be for a couple to be given the halachot, the Jewish laws of availance, of mourning in this situation, because it is such a unique situation. But that doesn't mean that the couple does not have to have the choices. So if a baby is buried in a not-Jewish cemetery, if you're thinking about things that have happened to you, that is okay because there is no halacha. But we do encourage the baby to be buried in a Jewish cemetery. Many Jewish cemeteries have a baby section. Some cemeteries, some people you could offer if you have a family plot. And that is something that everybody must be familiar with within their community, what their funeral home has to offer. A baby is, we encourage the family to give the baby a name at whatever point they desire, but definitely a late term loss or a stillbirth, because it's real. And the couple has a choice to share the name or not to share the name, just to have it between themselves. And the couple can choose the name. The Chevra Kadisha does not have to choose the name. The couple can choose the name, and we work with them individually doing so as well. If the baby had been buried without a name and later on they've reached out to us, we work with them about giving the baby the name for two reasons. It makes it more real and helps the grief process. And if there is other children in the family or future children, you don't want the baby to be referred to as the baby. We need to give it some reality. If it is a boy, the boy's given a bris. It's important and allowed for the parents to know that they have the choice to attend the burial, definitely to know where the baby's buried, to put up some type of matzeva or marker. It's a choice. If they're not up to going, we do encourage another family member. I've attended funerals, or the rabbi, rebbitzin, somebody there, and somebody to have the information for them, because I can tell you 99% the couples will reach out and want to know where their child is buried. My grandmother, who I said, I'm also from Massachusetts, they lived in Springfield, and my grandmother had lost the baby at 28 hours in 1942, and her baby was buried in Hartford, Connecticut. And to the day she died 30 years ago, she always looked to find information where her baby was buried. And there is none, because that was just society at that day. You don't have to have Shiva, but I know many couples who have organized time for mourning. And that's up to the couple too. And that is something that their rabbi can help with, their rebbitzin, community members, family can organize a time for visits, if that's what they choose. Memory objects. They have the ultrasound pictures. They have videos now. People have their stick that tells them they're pregnant. If the baby is later on a stillbirth or a SIDS, so you have pictures. The hospitals will prepare. Most hospitals will prepare a memory box. It's okay for the couple to have the memory box. It's okay for the couple to hold the baby, even stillbirth, couple to take pictures of the baby. That is all allowed and encouraged. It's encouraged because they can never get that time back. People have a minhag custom to light a Shabbat candle for their children. We encourage that as well. They have a Yoetzet memorial candle. There are many things to do on the Yoetzet, and they can say Yizkor as well. Okay, you have to take care of yourself. If you're the person that is grieving, both the men and women, or if you're helping someone who is grieving, here are some of the ways that you can take care of yourself. Okay. Be patient and gentle. It takes time. So many couples, this is the first time they've really gone through any trauma or grief. Many of them are young, haven't been married that long. They don't know what to do. All their lives, I'm guilty of it too as a parent. We try to help our children. We try to give them all the answers, but they have to be patient, and it will take time. Physically, to take care of yourself. So if it's physically, the woman has to, she may have gone through a delivery or some type of medical procedure. It's important to make sure that they're taking care of themselves, because they may not want to. So whatever that means in terms of eating, drinking, any medications. Try to do something that you love for the moment, whatever's going to bring you comfort. Try to find that without feeling guilty that you're doing that. And even if it's for a short time, and as the grief journey continues, we try to have the couple just to find something to do. Celebrate small victories. And what I mean by this, we tell the couple, did you get up this morning? Maybe took a shower, maybe not. Got dressed, during COVID, we had to change what that meant. Eat a little something. That's a great day. Give a sticker. It's really the small victories that you have to embrace. And if you're not at your best, and most of us are not used to feeling like this, don't be hard on yourself. It is a unique time for you. And if it gives you a break, if grief gives you, embrace it. So many times I hear people say, for 10 minutes, I felt okay. Or I went for a walk, or I turned on the television, or my husband and I, we didn't talk about the loss for an hour. That's okay. We're human. And the only way we can survive this is if we spend time and get a little break from the grief. And ask support. That's why it's important to have an evening like this, so everybody here can understand if they're going through the losses or if you're going to need to help somebody. That's why we invite everybody on, not just those who've experienced it, because you need to ask for support. Like I just said, some things we can't fix. We're so used to living in a world of fixing things for each other, for ourselves, for work, for our children, everything. We need a recipe, we Google it. Our child comes home and is upset with their grade, we call the teacher, but we can't fix this. And the most important thing to do is to listen. Just listen, which is not an easy trait for most of us, but really it's about listening. So what can you do? Reach out and acknowledge their struggle. And you may finish the Zoom tonight and say, oh, I should have reached out to that person. I didn't reach out to that person. It's never too late. Allow them to say how they feel without judging them. What I said before about the name, if the couple refers to the baby by name, you should too. You're going to look at the comments, right? They're coming up. Okay. Follow up when you say you will. That's so important. People wait for that call. And that's in any type of loss or trauma. You say, I'm going to call you tomorrow at 10:30. If you can't, make sure you tell them beforehand. And be aware of your surroundings and people when you're speaking, where you're talking. At the supermarket may not be the good time to say, oh, I heard what happened to you. And let me just tell you, these are all things I'm discussing now that have actually happened to myself and to our many families that we work with. Okay. What else can you do? So this becomes a little complicated, especially in communities like yours. Include them in community events. Invite them for a meal. Invite them, let's say, for a Shabbat lunch. But understand who you're inviting. Don't have them with 3 other families and you're going to discuss, this tuition costs in day schools now. But on the other hand, a young couple doesn't necessarily want to be invited with people, over 60. So really try to understand and invite them, include them in social gatherings, but understand if they don't come. And understand if they don't stay the whole time. And understand if right before lunch they call you, they come over and they say, we're not staying, or they have to leave in the middle. Don't take it personally. And always reach out. I said, we live today in a day and age, text, emails, voice notes, whatever you can do, but don't expect a call back. They may, but if they don't, understand it's not about you, it's about the couple. And acknowledge their step forward, not overly. Oh, it's nice to see you back at work, at shul. Very simple, but acknowledge it. And remember anniversaries. Make a note of it when it's going to be the Yoetzet, or maybe their due date, or a birthday. Even years later, acknowledge it. I just recently, last week, we got a donation from a few families who the couple was making a kiddush for the Yoetzet of their baby that had passed away 30 years ago, but never could acknowledge it at that time. And it was so beautiful that they did it and how the friends reacted. And this is so true. Don't know what to say to someone who lost a baby. Nobody does. You just have to show up. And what to say. I'm sorry to hear what you're going through. It's good to see you. I've been thinking about you. Can I get you something from the store? Anything that you do to anybody else with a loss and grief. I know you have your meal trains and your carpools, and all of that system needs to be in place too for a person that is that acknowledges, that wants to acknowledge their pregnancy and infant loss. And that again goes back to the, we ask them to designate a member of the family, the Yoetzet, Rebbitzin, rabbi, friend, somebody who is going to be the go-to person. And if they're sharing with you the information that everything that you do for somebody else, you need to do that with this couple as well. And don't forget the men. All right, helping other children. So if the family has other children or the future children, we encourage them to discuss with their other children, depending on their ages and their knowledge and their level of understanding of loss and grief, because children know that there's something wrong. And as I said, I have been a kindergarten teacher for many, many years. There are some new books finally out that help children. We can help with that as well. We tell parents, reach out to the schools, tell the people what you're going through. I mean, this week's past Parsha was Noah. Our kids learn about things at very young ages. The flood destroyed, God destroyed the world. So now more than ever, they do understand things and they're being taught things. So it's important for them to explain to the children on their level. It was always important, for example, with myself and my husband, he was our first, and our children always knew that they had an older brother. And I'm, grateful to say that I have, 3 married children with children, and it didn't affect them emotionally. And again, if you're the teacher or friends, share if you see any unusual behaviors in their children. And remember also that play dates, school events can be triggers to these couples as well. And what we said too, ask the couple how they feel about visitors, offer support to extended family, as we said, very important. And again, I want to reiterate, if they react negatively, people will say to me, sometimes there's always a story. I get a phone call, this is what happened to us. You're not going to believe it. My sister's due tomorrow. My brother's getting married next week. My best friend's having a bris. If they don't show up at the event or if they react negatively, they're not mad at you. They're not, if you're pregnant, they're not jealous. They want you to have a healthy baby. And that's what the couple tells me. But they are going to be angry and it may come off negative, but don't take it personally. And communities should always have protocols for notifications. And, again, I said, the funeral home, hopefully our information, from a comfort to be able to help with these families beforehand. And this has been one of my missions now for a while, to try to change the world, but I can't necessarily change the world. But every time I do a presentation, when you meet somebody, don't ask them, are you married, which we know, do you have children? And especially today, we all have to be politically correct with so many things. Just tell me about your family. And the couple could tell you about their kids or their mother-in-law or their cat, whatever they want. But it's so important that we really think before we meet somebody new. And what not to say. And these are actual real things that were said. You should be over it now. Don't pass judgment. Don't avoid the couple. I remember the first time that I spoke in Teaneck in 15 years ago already. All my friends showed up. And I said, what are you here for? No, we're going to come. And for 2 weeks, they kept apologizing. We crossed the street when we saw you. I said, we're not Catholic. I forgive you all. But they felt bad. And I could tell you, it's better to show up and maybe say the wrong thing than not to show up at all. Okay. Don't change the subject. Again, you need to be comfortable with showing up and talking. Never give legal or medical advice unless they ask you. And this really could go for many different situations. Again, don't say they had bad care. We all tend to do that. Oh, you're going to sue. You're going to. Okay. Even if they're talking about it, just listen. Also, don't talk about other people's losses or tragedy. I mean, that's a common thing. My sister had a miscarriage. My mother had a stillbirth. I work with somebody, because no two losses are the same. Even if medically and physically they're the same, everybody is different. So this is also, you could go to the next slide. So overpost your wonderful life on social media. And this is also a situation. You could go to the next slide. So here, my infertility posts make you more comfortable. Let me just get back to those nonstop picture posts about your pregnancy, baby, children. So this becomes, an interesting dilemma, because we want to post our families, and that's okay. And that's okay for you to post your families. We work with the couple and we explain to them, don't go on social media, especially Mother's Day, especially around the holidays. We're going to take our pictures, camp pictures, if that's going to be hard for you. But what we're asking is, try to limit them, so much. Understand what people are going through. And I think we're trying to be sensitive in all situations. Things not to say. Continue. I know how you feel, even if you think they do. It's for the best. I get that all the time now. Not so much now, because now people are afraid of me now that I'm doing this over many years. They'll say, now you understand why your son died. You've created this wonderful organization to help people. And I would say, now I just have to give them a look. So never say anything like that. You'll get over it. That's not true. You can always try again. None of us are prophets. We don't know what's going to happen. We have no idea what's going on in people's lives. This is one. You didn't know your baby. Again, I hope by tonight's presentation you understand where the attachment has begun. Okay. You have other children. A great job. I remember saying to people when they say this, and I have to explain to them, I said, God forbid if somebody's mother passed away, would you go to a Shiva house and say, oh, it's okay, you have a father? Sometimes I've heard things like that too. So you can never say, every child is an individual. And it's a test from God. We're going to read about Abraham and his test. I don't know anybody else besides Abraham that tests. Definitely, I don't know anybody now. So we really don't know. And it only happens to people who can handle it. And I always say, and families that say this to people, they say, I don't want to handle it. Okay. So I hope that you understand the most important thing is just to show up and to listen. Be true, be gentle and caring friend, family member, even a stranger that this happens to. It will be appreciated. We continue after tonight, as I'm sure some of you have already done, to be the link in the chain of support. And like I said, we help all Jewish families going through this loss all over the world, as well as besides working with the individual family, I have case managers. We have our hotline. You can reach out to us on our website, you can email, and we also help rabbis and community leaders who need help with the family, as well as we also do trainings like tonight's program, and we train Yoetzet and clergy and medical staff and funeral homes and communities and workplaces as well. So thank you for taking the time, and here's our information. And reach out. And just to mention, all of our services to the couples and the families are free of charge. We never will charge anyone for our services. And thank you. I know we had some comments.
Thank you so much for such a important wealth of information to better understand the experience of the couples going through this, and also how we the community members can support those couples. If anyone has any questions, we'd be happy to take them in at the last few minutes here. And thank you for sharing us on Naomi. I saw your comment there. Thank you for sharing that in the chat.
I don't know. Are there any comments?
I can read it out if people
okay.
Yeah. For some women and couples, self-care includes donating breast milk that their baby will no longer be able to have. This is a very personal decision. For those who choose to do so, milk or organ donation can bring enormous comfort and a sense of meaning and helping others at this terrible time.
So there are, I actually have a contact if anybody knows somebody or chooses to do that. We do have a contact with that. If somebody is able, or now the procedures or the deliveries don't happen immediately. So I know that can be offered in the hospital, and it's okay to do if that's going to help you.
I know, Naomi, that you're very involved in that here in the Boston area as well.
Okay.
Are there any other questions or comments people would like to share at this time? Yeah, I can just, please, David.
No, I just want to share, I really like everything you said, and I like the what not to say. I remember many years ago, I bumped into a friend of mine in the park in New York, and he said, "Oh, how many kids do you have?" So I answered, I have 3. I had 4, but 1 died. That was my response. It's such a stupid thing to say, just in general, and it really hit a nerve with me.
But I think that's, the couples ask me that question, and thank you for sharing that. They say, what answer am I going to give to people when they ask me that question? And I said, whatever you choose at that moment, because you in your heart and your head know how many children you have. It's not going to make a difference. And you could choose to share that, or you could choose not to share that. And that's okay. And nowadays I'll tell people I have 4 living children, but there was many times I don't or didn't. And that's okay too. We besides the religious memorials, we help the families to also create something that may talk to themselves. Sometimes they want to plant a tree that blossoms at the same season that they lost their baby, or they have a piece of jewelry. I have a bracelet with all of my kids on it, including my son Pesach, and then I have 2 bracelets with my grandchildren. Or people can create a rock garden, or just light a candle, or keep a candle lit, or if they have a matzeva at a cemetery. So you could create your own personal memorial or share it, and that's your choice. And thank you for sharing it.
I like your mission to change the question that where people are so tempted to say, and to change that to ask, tell me about your family. I think it's such a better framing of that question, that you're trying to get the same information. Another question came to the chat that I wanted to ask you. Do you have any advice for getting through pregnancy after multiple losses and dealing with the anxiety?
So that is an important topic. And actually, this coming week, we are launching a bi-monthly support group for pregnancy after loss. So you can find the information because it is a difficult pregnancy. We tell first and foremost to make sure you have the right medical care. If you're happy with the doctor from your first pregnancies and your losses, then stay with them. If not, you need to make sure that your doctor is aware of your anxieties, that you're going to be able to reach out to the doctor for, more visits, however that's going to help you. And I think also to get the support, to join, to be able to speak about your anxieties, and to know that it's going to be a different type of pregnancy as well. I was recently at a conference last week, and there's not so many conferences for this community. And somebody has just in the process of developing an app that's, we all have our pregnancy apps. What size vegetable is our child, this month, but the app will include the extra anxiety. So it's important to be part of some support, to be able to talk about your anxieties, and to make sure you're getting medical staff that can help you as much as you can get through it.
So where can someone find information about that upcoming support group?
You go on our website, nechamacomfort.org, or on Facebook and Instagram, or reach out to me directly.
Thank you. Anyone else like to share anything or any questions before we wrap up here? Okay, well, thank you so much for everyone here for joining this conversation. It's so important that we create it's the small things that make a big difference, right? It's those small questions that can really change someone's day, can change someone's experience. It's also the bigger things, the structural things that we can do in our communities to help. So thank you all for being here to move our community forward in terms of being a place that can support all of our members going through these losses. And thank you so much, Riva, for joining us tonight and for sharing your years of wisdom with us. It was really so informative and helpful.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad we finally were able to do it. And I just hope that nobody should ever feel alone when experiencing this, and to reach out really at any time. And for anybody on tonight who've experienced losses, I'm so sorry for what you're going through, but appreciate where you are today. And thank you again for all of your work and what the Yoetzet community does for everyone around.
Thank you.
And enjoy the New England winters. I do love New England, and I'm only in New Jersey, but I have a special place.
We will hopefully get you out here in person at some point in the future.
All right, good.